More than 1,300 people across Europe have died in the past week because of heat. Their homes, schools, and hospitals were never built to survive. And the head of the World Health Organization said that sentence out loud, plainly, without hedging. A 60 Minutes investigation that aired last night found that more than $1 billion has been bet on America's wars through online prediction markets, with win rates so suspiciously high that regulators are calling it a brand new category of insider trading, happening at exactly the moment the agency meant to police it has gutted its own enforcement staff. And Canada's men's soccer team produced the single greatest moment in its history, Sunday, with a stoppage-time goal that's going to be replayed in that country for decades. Let's get into all three. Start with the heat wave, because the death toll crossed a threshold this weekend that demands more than a passing mention in a weather segment. The World Health Organization's Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, announced Sunday that Europe has recorded more than 1,300 excess deaths since June 21st, as an omega block weather pattern, named for the shape it traces across the upper atmosphere, trapping a bulging mass of superheated air over the continent with almost no wind to disperse it, pushed temperatures past 40 degrees Celsius across Spain, Germany, and France. Tedros' framing of why this is happening deserves to be quoted exactly as he said it. European homes, workplaces, and schools were not built for these temperatures. That's not a politician's talking point. That's the head of the Global Health Authority stating as a matter of infrastructure fact that the built environment millions of Europeans live and work inside simply wasn't engineered for the climate they're now living in. France alone accounts for roughly 1,000 of those deaths. Public Health France, operating under the country's Ministry of Health, said in a statement Sunday that since June 24th, approximately 1,000 additional deaths, unconsolidated figures, have been observed compared to the deaths recorded in previous months. And the agency was explicit that this preliminary count is likely an undercount, with the true toll expected to rise as data comes in from deaths at home and in residential care facilities, which take longer to register than hospital deaths. 85% of those deaths involved people aged 65 and older. The largest concentration was in people dying alone at home, particularly in the Île-de-France region around Paris, which prompted the health agency to add a line in its statement that's worth sitting with. This is a reminder of the need for measures of solidarity toward people who are isolated or experiencing profound loneliness, including in highly urbanized areas. That's a public health agency telling you, in its official mortality statement, that social isolation is now a documented heat death risk factor on par with infrastructure failure. The toll spread well beyond France. Germany experienced what its National Weather Service confirmed was the warmest night since records began nearly 150 years ago, with the town of Kubschitz never dropping below 29.4 degrees Celsius overnight. At least 7 people drowned in Germany over the weekend in swimming accidents, as residents flocked to lakes and rivers for relief from temperatures that reached or exceeded 40 degrees in many places. One of those deaths carried its own particular weight. Kenzo Keys, a 21-year-old professional footballer for French club Guingamp, drowned in the Rhône River while reportedly trying to cool off from the heat. His club's statement said simply that they were saddened and offered the family full support during this difficult time. A professional athlete in peak physical condition, killed by a river that thousands of people were turning to for the exact same reason he did. Spain's mortality monitoring system separately estimated more than 400 heat-linked deaths between Wednesday and Saturday alone. The UK recorded its hottest June day on record Friday. Preliminary all-time temperature records fell in Germany, Denmark, and the Czech Republic on Saturday. I want to be precise about what scientists are and aren't saying here, because it matters for how seriously this should land. The Al Jazeera and Euronews reporting both confirmed the same scientific consensus. This heat wave would have been virtually impossible without man-made climate change. That's not speculative hedging. That's the current state of climate attribution science, which has become precise enough to make causal claims like that about specific weather events, not just long-term trends. This is also, notably, the second major European heat wave in roughly a month, which killed at least 18 people and broke records across 5 countries at the time. What changed between then and now isn't the science's confidence level. It's the death toll, which has gone from dozens to well over 1,000 in the same broad geographic footprint within 5 weeks. Tedros' statement about buildings not being built for these temperatures isn't a forecast anymore. It's a description of something currently killing people in functioning, wealthy, developed European democracies in real time. That's a story about a system failing to keep pace with a threat everyone saw coming. The next one is about a system that's actively being dismantled while the threat it's supposed to police gets worse. CBS's 60 Minutes aired an investigation Sunday night into something I've touched on before, but which just got a significant new layer of documentation: the explosion of prediction market betting on American wars and the mounting evidence that some of the most profitable bets are being placed by people who know what's coming before the public does. The headline figure is genuinely staggering. More than $1 billion has been wagered this year alone on military decisions and outcomes tied to the Iran War and the operation to capture former Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. People are betting on when and how attacks will happen, whether airspace will close, whether enriched uranium will change hands, with the same casual interface you'd use to bet on a football game. The specific evidence laid out in the 60 Minutes investigation is hard to wave away as coincidence. Bloomberg's earlier analysis, cited in the broader reporting, found that bets tied to U.S. strikes on Iran and potential ceasefires accounted for roughly $45 million in transactions flagged as anomalous on Polymarket alone, making the Iran war the single largest source of suspicious trading activity on the platform. One particularly stark example: an account created just 2 hours before its first trade placed a position on a peace deal market that paid out about $1.5 million, generating a clean profit of roughly $370,000. And the same wallet holds positions in 3 related markets that could pay out further if they resolve in its favor. On the more traditional commodities side, about 15 minutes before Trump posted on Truth Social in March, signaling a pause in strikes on Iranian civilian infrastructure, a post that immediately moved oil prices. Roughly 6,200 Brent and WTI contracts changed hands in a single 1-minute window, at a volume analysts described as 8 to 10 times the typical rate for that time of day. Representative Richie Torres called that specific pattern a statistical impossibility for anyone trading without advanced knowledge. The Anti-Corruption Data Collective ran its own independent analysis, specifically looking at long-shot wagers on military markets. Bets of more than $2,500 with less than a 35% chance of winning. Despite the long odds, bettors won far more than they lost, and the report's authors described the pattern as evidence of systemic insider trading in military betting specifically. Not just isolated bad actors. David Koval, a former commodities trader who's now a New York lawyer representing fraud victims and who secured the largest whistleblower award for commodities market manipulation in U.S. history back in 2021, put his own assessment plainly to 60 Minutes. "I'm highly suspicious at this point. And I'm not the only one. Any trader right now is highly suspicious. Here's the part of this story that should actually alarm you more than the gambling itself. Who's supposed to be stopping it? And what's happened to that agency? Oversight in the U.S. falls to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, a small, somewhat obscure agency originally set up in the 1970s to regulate food prices, now responsible for policing a multi-billion-dollar prediction market industry built on exactly the kind of classified and non-public information that government officials, military planners, intelligence analysts, and even military spouses are routinely exposed to. The CFTC is currently run by a single chairman, Michael Selig, a 36-year-old Trump appointee, rather than the 5-person commission that's historically overseen it. Selig told 60 Minutes, "We will hold whoever's engaging in fraudulent, manipulative, or insider trading activity accountable to the American people." Here's what's actually happened on his watch. Enforcement actions have dropped by more than 2/3 since 2024, and staffing has dropped sharply alongside it. Think about the shape of that combination. The volume of suspicious war-related betting activity is accelerating. Bloomberg's data, the Anti-Corruption Data Collective's findings, and 60 Minutes' own reporting all point the same direction. At the exact same time, the one U.S. agency with statutory authority to investigate and prosecute it has shrunk its enforcement capacity by roughly 2/3. That's not a coincidence that requires a conspiracy theory to explain. It's simply what happens when an under-resourced agency gets less resourced, while the thing it's supposed to police gets bigger and more lucrative. One arrest has been made so far. Army Master Sergeant Gannon Ken Van Dyke, who pleaded not guilty last month to using a VPN workaround to bet roughly $34,000 on the operation to capture Maduro, an operation he personally participated in, and netted more than $400,000 before immediately trying to delete his betting account. Whether he turns out to be a rare exception or simply the first person careless enough to get caught is, right now, an open question that a shrinking enforcement division is increasingly ill-equipped to answer. And now, because both of those stories carry real weight, let's spend a few minutes on something that happened Sunday that has absolutely nothing wrong with it. The World Cup's knockout stage began Sunday, and Canada delivered what is, without much argument, the biggest moment in the history of its men's national soccer program. Facing South Africa in the opening round of 32 match at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, the game stayed scoreless deep into the second half. Then, in the 92nd minute, deep into stoppage time, the kind of moment that either becomes a heartbreaking near miss or a story people tell for the rest of their lives, midfielder Steven Eustachio buried a shot after a headed clearance fell perfectly in front of him at the top of the penalty box. Canada won 1-0. They advanced to face the winner of Monday's Morocco-Netherlands match in the round of 16 in Houston on July 4th. There's a layer of this story that makes it even better. Canada's captain, Alphonso Davies, made his tournament debut in that exact match, having missed the entire group stage recovering from a hamstring injury. He came back in a single elimination, win-or-go-home match on home soil as one of 3 official host nations, and his team produced the latest, most dramatic possible winning goal to send them through. Jesse Marsch's side had already been written about with some skepticism throughout the group stage. Canada had been called a work in progress heading into the knockouts, and they answered that with the single biggest goal in their program's history at the latest possible moment. With their captain back on the field for the first time all tournament, I don't have a critical angle here, and once again, I'm genuinely happy not to need one. A team that wasn't supposed to be anyone's favorite produced the kind of moment that soccer exists to produce, and an entire country gets to feel that for as long as this tournament keeps going. That's worth 90 seconds of your time with absolutely no caveat attached. 3 stories today. More than 1,300 people across Europe have died from heat in buildings the World Health Organization says were never engineered for it, with the death toll climbing roughly 70-fold compared to a similar heat wave just 5 weeks earlier. A billion-dollar betting market built around predicting America's wars is producing suspiciously perfect win rates. At the exact moment, the agency responsible for catching it has cut its own enforcement capacity by 2/3. And Canada's national soccer team produced a goal in the 92nd minute of a match that will be shown on highlight reels in that country for the rest of this decade. 2 of these stories are about systems that haven't kept pace with what they were supposed to handle. 1 built environment, 1 regulatory agency. The third is just proof that sometimes, with 90 seconds left on the clock, something works out exactly the way it's supposed to.